We keep hearing about how AI is lowering the barrier of entry for coding your own AI tools, but I wanted to find a real example so we can all learn from someone who's done it. So in episode 77 of Tool Use, we're joined by Justin Borge. Justin's a trained marketer who transitioned into a growth engineer. He's built Helios, a system to help him manage all aspects of his life, but he has no coding experience and learned everything with the help of AI. So we're going to cover his process for creating code without knowing how to code, how to plan and improve personal tools that actually save time, and how he gets unstuck and fixes bugs. So please enjoy this conversation with Justin Borge.
I actually come from a marketing background, SEO, content marketing. I've been consulting and I ran a little agency for the last 8 years. I was seeing the writing on the wall when it came to AI. I was using it myself a lot. And from my perspective, writing content blog posts was not something that I was confident in doing for the long haul, the way AI was getting super good. And even SEO consulting, like everything I knew, AI knew. And I was like, I'm going to need to pivot a little bit. And so it was a little bit defensive, but also like I'm excited by AI and I have a marketing background. So I was just playing around with it a lot, like more than the average person, I think. And the pivot I wanted to make was moving into a growth engineer role. So utilizing both my skills in marketing, but also combining that with my love of technology and getting really good at this stuff. The visual I had in my head was, this is obviously the future. And companies are going to want people who are good at this stuff. And, I'm thankfully interested in this stuff. So kind of combining my knowledge of AI or my love of AI, my use of AI, with my marketing background, being the guy who connects marketing and business stuff, sales, revenue, bottom line, with also being now having the ability to run AI super well, I felt like that was a good position.
Could you actually touch on that first exposure? Was it you tried ChatGPT and saw the capability? Was there some other introduction that kind of made you have that realization that this is the future?
Yeah, it was ChatGPT was my gateway intro, as it probably is for a lot of people. But I was at first just kind of tinkering around with it, just chatting with it, saying, hey, what's your opinion on this and that? Can you do this? And the more I played with it, the more I was just like, wow, this is incredible. This is the future. I was really impressed by it, but I also saw a lot of just utility for it. Like not just writing, articles or editing articles, because frankly, I didn't do a super good job at that at the time. But I saw about like, okay, if I get really good at prompting. So my entryway was prompt engineering, I guess. But I figured out that if, the better my prompts are, the better it does. And I've always been, for lack of a better word, lazy in a good way. Like I would rather invest energy up front to get good at building something that makes the rest of my life easier. And that kind of has forced me to do a lot of awesome stuff with AI. But yeah, it was ChatGPT. I was realizing that, it was kind of producing quick results, but it wasn't like I could sell this. I would, try to, at the time I was consulting I was writing articles, like blog articles, LinkedIn posts, stuff like that. And I was like, I can't sell this. I can't give this back to my client as is. I'm going to spend more time editing it than just passing it off. But I was like, okay, this is clearly a way of making this produce better results. So I think that was the backtrack.
And continuing that progression, intro to ChatGPT, realizing that the better the input, the better the output. What type of tools do you use now? How have you found experimenting with it? Love to hear your journey there.
Sure. So I've actually figured out, my personal favorites. I'm a big Gemini guy. I really like Gemini. I think I was using ChatGPT for coding a lot. And then I discovered Claude for coding and it blew it away. Like I was getting really stuck and hung up on some problems. So then I took the advice of a good friend of mine, Sam Julien. He was a guest in your show a couple weeks ago. He told me to check out Claude, and it solved this problem like right away, like right out of the park. So that was pretty amazing. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. I was just playing around with like the basic GUIs. I hadn't even discovered Cursor or Windsurf or anything like that yet. I think what I wanted to point out here is that I was using Gemini so much, Claude, ChatGPT, that I was just figuring out ways of getting better at them, for basically everything. It wasn't necessarily always work. Sometimes it was like managing recipes in the kitchen. Sometimes it was optimizing my calendar, figuring out, my workout schedules, things like that. And I figured out, pretty early on that this concept of putting in JSON documents, having an ongoing JSON document of everything I'm thinking about a certain subject. Here's everything I believe, here's everything I learn on a certain topic. For example, fitness. Here's my fitness JSON, and this my fitness JSON, and it has my preferred diet methods, my protein intake, my macros, et cetera, et cetera. Here's my gym routine, and I could just save that one JSON, drag it into the GUI, the Gemini console, and be like, hey, you're a fitness expert, critique this for me. That made my life a lot easier than having to open up the console and spend 10 minutes typing things in, every time. Because as you and probably all of your listeners know, these tools have a shelf life. The longer the conversation goes, the more forgetful it gets, or starts to give you weird, crazy responses, and you're like, oh, this is getting tedious. So I felt like learning to manage JSON documents and have like a really organized folder for every aspect of my business, my life, and then being able to drag and drop those, it made me super focused and really good with the stuff.
Excellent. And I love the idea of creating a personal, like a knowledge library, just information about you, things you can easily add in. Did you do anything in terms of storing prompts that you found successful, or templates that you could reuse?
I have quite a few of those. So I use Raycast. It's a snippet expander. I'm not sure if you know it well, but I use Raycast, and I just have these really elaborate prompts that I can open up a real quick prompt and just paste it in there. And it's like, okay, when I'm coding, for example, I'm not, your listeners should know I'm a marketer by trade, growth engineer by trade. But I've been coding, I've been developing, but I'm not a traditional coder. I don't have a CS degree. So I have a lot of these like prompts. I have one that I use just called Tell Me. And this Tell Me is like, it's this big, long, elaborate paragraph saying, I'm not a developer. Make this really easy for me. I don't want to think. Just tell me, like, analyze this code. Tell me what to look for, what to copy paste, and what to replace it with. And like, I use Tell Me like 100 times a day. Like, it makes my life super easy. And then it goes, great, got it. Look for this, highlight it, delete it, replace with this. And I go, boom, done. That's a good one. But I've got a ton of stuff just like that. When I'm editing, like, I have a lot of rules for trying to make written content not sound like AI. So like, don't use an M dash. Don't use the quintessential two separate clauses with a colon. I feel like I use this stuff so much. I can see AI writing instantly now, for better or for worse. I have a lot of prompts like that.
I was gonna say, I've been getting a lot of inbound messages for tool use, and you can pick off right away which ones are AI generated. It's just, it follows the same pattern, the same kind of mannerisms, AI-isms. And it is standing out where if you're able to make skills, or if you're able to be skilled enough as a writer that you can steer it in a way, you just get such better returns because you're kind of circumventing this like AI slop.
What's annoying to me is I was a content writer for many years. People would hire me to write their articles for them. And I used M dashes all the time. I thought it was good writing. Now, that's actually like, my own writing. And now I see, I'm like, God damn, I have to remove that M dash because people are going to think it was ChatGPT.
Another casualty of AI.
Yeah, I know. RIP M dash. One cool thing you might find interesting is because I still am a writer. I still like to write. I've been writing for many years. Because I had so much actual published content, I was able to, what's it called when you custom train like a GPT on your own writing? So I have one that sounds like me. It took hours. So I uploaded like a bunch of old tweets. I uploaded all my old articles from various different topics. And so like, now it has like my writing nuance, like my tone of voice, and it actually does sound like me, which is pretty awesome.
One thing that I think is very impressive, a lot of people, when they start exploring AI, reach this point where they start developing an intuition around prompting and whatnot, but they're always, or not always, but a lot of them are very hesitant to jump the chasm towards coding because coding is something out of their realm. They're not familiar with it. With writing, you can very quickly gauge better or worse. But with code, if you don't understand it, it's just kind of ones and zeros. What was it that kind of pushed you from just having this chat dynamic with AI to actually going with the coding aspect to build tools?
Yeah, you know what? I've coded so many amazing tools. Like your listeners should know this. Like I am not a coder. I made that clear, but I have coded some impressive stuff where, I've worked with AI to code some impressive stuff. And it blows my mind what I've been capable to produce. Like I myself, like I don't mean to sound like down on myself. I've just never coded. So like the fact that I can produce this now is like, wow, I'm amazing. You know, that was a joke. But yeah, I remember vividly the first thing I coded actually, this is going to sound super nerdy. I like baseball. I like fantasy baseball. I've been playing since I was a child. And there's a lot of data involved in fantasy baseball to predict, a player's future performance. And I was like, you know what? I want to make an algorithm. Like, let's make an algorithm that takes all these players, like underlying stats and data and metrics, and like predicts how things are going to go. And I just kind of like chatted. I think it was ChatGPT at the time, and I was just like, "Hey, is this possible?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's totally possible." Like, let's build a Python script. And I was like, "Well, what's Python?" I wasn't that dense. I knew what Python was, but that was like, okay, this isn't as scary as I thought. Like, I just wanted to like solve a problem. I asked it, "What are your ideas for solving this problem?" And it's like, let's code something. And that's how I've approached like everything since then. Like has moved into my work, not just baseball. But it's like I approach a problem or I have an idea like, hey, this is really annoying to me. This one I need a solution to X problem. Do you have any ideas? Like, and it's like, yeah, here's an idea. And 9 times out of 10, like, I like those ideas. Those are super cool. Let's work on it. And I think the more like comfortable I get with using these tools, the more comfortable I get with coding. And it's just like I told you, it's like, tell me what to do. I paste it in. I have, a good system. I'm simplifying, but like I have a good system in mind. I'm good with this stuff. Yeah. So yeah, just solving problems, I guess.
And actually, could you go a little bit deeper into that? The process for getting unstuck. Like, how do you debug something when you don't fully understand the code? Is it just fire ChatGPT and have a conversation, or how do you go through that process?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I actually have a series that I go through because I'm also aware that like I don't want to produce vibe coded slop either. Like I want to do a good job, and I am logical. I don't just trust the first thing I see. So it produces something, and what I like to do is I have a solution for this, but rudimentary, explaining for your listeners. I would have 2 chat tabs going at once, for example, and I would say, this one is the one I'm trying to work with, and the one on the right, the other tab, you are a critical senior developer. Like, figure out what's wrong with this code. Like really tear into it. And then I would just like copy that. I'd paste it into that tab and it'd be like, oh, here's a glaring problem. You need to consider this. And then I would copy that back to the first one and said, hey, my senior developer said this was the problem. And it goes, oh, good catch. And then it fixes it. And then I put it back to the senior developer and it's like, oh, you solved it. Great job. And so I'm just kind of like making the two communicate with each other. And like, I'm just the vessel.
I also noticed in the blog post, and for the listeners, the blog post is actually something that pretty much inspired this episode. So we're going to go deeper into it. But one thing you mentioned is bully LLMs into writing code. Do you have prompting techniques that tend to get better results than others, or what's your approach there?
I got this. I think this is probably an outdated way of doing prompting at this point, but I've been doing it so long, it's just second nature. I always try to give it like a responsibility. This is a personality I'm talking to. So for this session, you take on this personality. You are X. You are a senior developer, et cetera, et cetera. And I have very, very elaborate documents. These are my personas. This is just a bunch of personas that I have made. I am a team of one. So I was like, what are the roles in a company? I got a CFO, I got a chief of staff, I got a CTO, director of communications, head of content, head of customer success. And so basically I pop up, for example, head of sales. And it's got this really elaborate process. Like, this is your job. You're the head of sales. You do this, you build revenue. You don't care about anything. And so it's just kind of like sitting at a table with, a bunch of people at a company and getting their perspective. And, because I'm a team of one, I love the fact that I can just pop this up and say, what do you think, sales? Or, does anybody have an opinion on this? Not quite like that, but, so this is the tool that I built and I wrote that blog post about. Essentially, all those personas are now in here. I just drop down and change which one I want to talk to. I can also change the model if I needed to. But this is my tool that I built using AI. But basically, if I want to have a conversation with, one of those people, head of design, like, what do you think of this? I can attach a screenshot and say, hey, this is what's going on. And it can pick it apart. One really cool persona I really like is the critic. It is a simple one, but it's basically you're ruthless and honest, give the opinions that other LLMs are too afraid to say aloud. Your only goal is to find holes, risks, logical fallacies, and gaps in the proposals found in the conversation history. Do not be polite. Like, that's the kind of thing. So I don't necessarily need to type this in. Like, if I am talking to the critic, it takes on that persona and it's going to argue with me. And then, because it remembers the conversation, just like in the chat, I can be like, okay, Director of Comms, what do you think of the critic's response? And then it takes on the Director of Comms role, and this is that role. And you can make them talk with each other until you get to a really good decision. I find that really useful.
Yeah, quickly on the personas, was there a process you went through to get them to the current state? Did you find some things worked, some things didn't, and you had to iterate, or how did you end up where you are now?
I'm always iterating. Like, if I use one and it produces something weird that I don't like, I will take this file, drag it in. I can use Helios, or I could just use, the Gemini, and I can say, hey, this is producing a suboptimal result. It keeps using great job, or it keeps using emojis, and that annoys me, something like that. Help me improve this text. Like, why is it doing that? So basically, I'm always iterating. And until that's when we use the term bully, that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm just saying, hey, how can I make this better? I'm just using it as a tool, basically, the tool it is.
Sure, yeah, and that's just a good example of meta prompting, where you use a prompt to make better prompts.
That's really like the best way of doing it too. I wish, if there's one thing I can instill upon people who use LLMs less than I do, it's that. Just like, ask it, like, what do you think I could do better?
Love the idea of being able to switch personas, get different perspectives, but I know this tool can do a lot more. So could you show us a couple other features?
You pick a model you want to work with, obviously. All right, ref attachments, that opens up this little file tray. You can add, screenshots, files just like you like. What I really like here is this ref source files. So these source files, I have them directed to demo workspace right now. Usually I have them going to big picture docs. This is my personal life. This is like my own goals. This is my business, my side business. I have a language learning website. But like, I can interact with my target audience. Here's my target audience definitions. Here's my competitors, my brand guidelines, my marketing playbook, growth projections, social media strategies, etc. For the demonstration purposes, I have a demo workspace. This is all for a fictional SaaS called Orbit. Don't ask about the name. It is just completely fictitious. And I have these: Q1 roadmap, Q2 roadmap, user feedback, web analytics, stuff like that. And they're all JSON documents. And this is all dummy stuff. But the idea is, this ref source files, when it's checked, it has access to all of these files, all these folders, product, Q1 roadmap, revenue, stuff like that. So theoretically, if I wanted to have a chat with the CFO about revenue, because I have CFO, and ref source files attached. I'm just using Gemini 3 Flash, but obviously, you know, if I wanted something serious, I could use Pro. Like, look into our files. What are our financial goals looking like this year? And so it takes a minute. It thinks. It goes, okay, use these source files. You can even actually ask why it used those source files. So it went into strategy Q1 2026 objectives. Strategy Q1 2026 objectives. Why? It contains North Star metrics and revenue. Revenue, budget allocation. So it used these files. You can also see that I talked to the CFO. I was using the chat mode, and I was using Gemini 3 Flash, and I had ref source files attached or checked. And you can actually just read it. And it's basically, it's getting all this information directly from the respective file here. But yeah, so then I go, okay, CFO, what do you think head of sales? How could we improve our sales to meet these metrics? This is all demo stuff, so I'm just kind of showing you how it works. And you just chat with it just like that. And theoretically, or not theoretically, I know this for a fact, it remembers all this. It just stores it all in memory, just like, you know, another chat tool would. You can edit things if you can go back and stuff like that. But now that you have these, it references these source files, it has a lot of remembered context. Like, I think that's the one really good selling point on this, is it has all these personas. It has the files here. So it's always pulling from a single source of truth. And it's not hallucinating anything. And I personally don't have to worry about, hey, is it getting the right information? You can even see where it's getting it from and why.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to ground it in reality and actually have it cite its sources so you don't have to worry about hallucinations. Having the single source of truth does allow it to kind of like persist across conversations, because obviously memory and LLMs aren't a solved problem. So yeah, this is a great way to be able to interact with like a set knowledge base.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you said it better than I could. All right, so the next thing, I've kind of showed you the source files and the personas, but if I wanted to, you know, you can also attach stuff. It shows you if there's any attachments here. If you wanted to, say you had these people arguing, right? You're like, okay, we got to a good conclusion. I want to update a file. So now you say update files. And I'm just going to show you how this works for testing purposes, but let's just go into Q1 roadmap. Okay. And I'll say add something to the bottom of this file itself, and it's going to be able to do that because it has update files clicked. So for testing purposes, please add testing true to the very bottom of Q1 roadmap.json. And because it has update files on, it's going to take a moment to do this. And now, because editing file, so it's going to open Q1 roadmap.json. And you can see the file in the queue. So this queue is actually important because if I wanted to update more than one file, I could. It only does one at a time, so a one of one. But say, for example, your big picture strategy changed for your company. You're like, okay, let's update our big picture strategy. And there's 10 documents that talk about that strategy. You know, we're shifting away from using YouTube and now we're moving to Instagram only, something like that. It will actually be able to show you every document that discusses that strategy, and you can edit them one at a time. So you can see the changes. Like, it's granular. It shows you like the actual change. So before there was nothing there, it's going to add testing true. And you can even see the full side-by-side comparison if you wanted to. And now you see that the new version has testing true at the bottom. Just like that. If you approve, you can just hit accept. It's going to do it. You can also give it feedback and ask it to regenerate. actually make it say testing false, and then hit regenerate, and then it'll restart this over. But for now, I'm going to accept. Takes just a second. All done. And now we can actually see that testing true is at the bottom of that file. So essentially, what I'm pushing here is that this really grounds the conversation in reality. But if that reality changes, now you have the ability to update them right on the fly. The problem that I was having personally, the reason I started this whole conversation, actually, this goes back to what we were discussing earlier. You asked about my workflow. I have all these JSON documents, these sources of truth for my own personal business, my own work. And I'm constantly updating them. So say I had 10 documents that all talked about X problem I was trying to solve or X issue. I would have to manually update each of those myself. I would drag it into a Gemini conversation and say, update it, and it would do that. And it worked that way. But it was getting really tedious having to do that every time the plan changed. Not to mention, I would have to go into my custom gems. I was using Gemini gems or custom GPTs, and I'd have to update those JSONs after they'd been updated. So it was taking a lot of my time. So this whole conversation started with the reason I got the idea for this tool in the first place was I went into, Gemini and I said, I'm having this issue. Like, I'm a power user. I update JSON documents all the time. And every time I do update them, I have to drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. And it wastes an hour of my day. And I'm doing this multiple times a week. Like, can you think of anything? And it was like, oh, cool. Let's build Helios. And that's where this came from. And this took like 4 days.
One aspect I'd love to go into is as soon as you start giving these AI systems access to your file system, it opens up a whole bunch of vulnerabilities, because what happens if it reads a malicious file? What happens if it updates something it shouldn't? How do you control what it does and does not have access to?
Thank you for asking. These are Git commits. So I can create a manual Git snapshot right here, and it just goes right into Git. So made this change, enter reply, create snapshot. Takes a second. And if I want to restore previous version, because there you go. Then you could refine pricing model, and it just reverts all those files instantly because they're Git commits. So that was my solution to that. Does that answer your question?
Partially, but say I have a mix of personal and professional files on my computer, and I only want to interact with professional. Is there a way to kind of sandbox it to that?
So on the back end in the code itself, it's going to the specific files. So I guess if you're like a big company, you don't want to like share everything. You could say, hey, only interact with this folder. So right now it's only interacting with demo workspace. But if, when you and I hang up this call, I'm going to point it back to big picture docs because that's my personal life. But demo workspace is where it's going right now. It does, so as you know, or as I showed you, it does intuit which ones in that demo workspace folder to engage with. So it's saving tokens in that regard. But basically, the answer to your question is you manually tell it which folders you want it to have access to.
How much has this affected your workflow, impacted it? I'd love to just know the actual effect this tool has had on your day-to-day.
It's saving me so much time. I was preparing for this call, and I had it going into my big picture docs, and it was like, okay, how should I focus my conversation? How should I introduce myself? What key points should I be sure to bring up? What are some questions Mike might have for me? And it does that, and I don't have to manually drag and drop, here's what I'm doing with my business. It was very meta. I drag and dropped the tool itself. So here's the documentation for the tool. This is a JSON of this tool itself that I'm showing you. And then here's the actual Python code. And I just dragged those two things in. And I said, hey, I'm preparing my interview for, with Mike today. What are some questions he might ask me? And because I dragged these two files in, it had access to my whole life. Like Justin Borge's, what you do for a living, project I'm working on. It's got, talk about my Portuguese website, my personal website, here's context that I'm, my big picture goals. And it was like, okay, because it has all this context, all I had to do was drag in these two files, tell it, help me prepare. And it was like a brain. Like, your brain is able to pull upon context. I've just given it the ability to have that context at all times.
I absolutely love this. The fact that someone who is like not traditionally technical is able to identify friction in their workflows and builds a tool, it makes it easier, and then expands upon it to find other use cases that also help save time. And I hope more people explore this type of thing.
Yeah, it's bananas. Like, I do give myself credit. Like, I'm logical, I'm practical, I'm good with using these tools. Like you and I discussed, like I've been using these tools for almost 3 years now, and more than 40 hours a week. Like my brain knows how to interact with LLMs very well. I'm very intuitive in that regard. But without these LLMs, like, a year and a half ago, I couldn't have done this even with an LLM. So like there is incentive to getting good at this stuff, because suddenly I'm able to produce stuff like this. And this isn't even the only one. I have a dozen more similar things. Like, I would just wanted to focus on this one for the sake of your listeners. But like, yeah, I like to tell people, like, take an interest in it, ask it what it can do, ask it like, can you help me solve this problem, and see what it comes up with, like, see where it leads you.
Perfect. Yeah, I was actually just about to ask, if someone's never written a line of code, what's the first thing that they should do to get there? So have these conversations. Do you have any other advice for someone who is confident using AI in terms of a chat interface, but hasn't really built their own tool yet?
I would say ask it for like a game plan on how to get caught up. I did that actually. At the time, I was building websites on WordPress. That was my background. I was a WordPress, web developer, and I never used Netlify. I never like coded my own site, but I wanted to. I knew that was like a superior way of building a website. I have an SEO background, and I knew that like WordPress sites could be bloated and they could load slow, and I always wanted a custom site. And so I asked, one of these tools, and I said, if I wanted to theoretically code my own site, what do I need to know? And it was like, well, actually, it's not so hard. Type this into terminal, paste it. Okay, pasted it. Now open up Netlify, make an account. Okay, I never even used Netlify at that time. And I'm just kind of like following the directions. And now I'm like, at some point you've used it so many times, it becomes second nature. And like, yeah, now I know how to use Netlify very well. Now I'm very good with, I have very elaborate websites that load blazing fast, and I was able to design them myself. And it's just astounding.
Along the same line, is there anything that you wish you did differently if you were to start over today, or anything that might help expedite the process of getting to the point you're at now?
Yes, JSON documentation. I've been harping on that this whole conversation, but I actually have consulted a few friends, personal, for free. Just here's how you can get caught up with these AI tools, because they know I use them. I talk about them too much. But they were like, hey, if I sat down with you, what would can you help me? I always harp on them. Follow this logic, make a folder, fill it full of JSON documentation. And that way it gives the AI context every single time. Like, it's garbage in, garbage out. I know that's, a trope, but it's a trope for a reason. Like, the more context you can give it, the more detailed your prompt, the better the response is going to be. So having these kind of ongoing JSON documents that you can update and say, here's what I'm learning. It's just like building your own brain, or giving it a brain to pull from. And that'll save you so much time. It'll give you so much better responses. I really can't harp on keeping JSON documentation as much as you can. Like, document.
Yeah, everyone talks about how valuable data is these days, but not enough people consider valuable for their own uses, where they just think, oh, maybe I could sell the data, maybe I can do this. But if you start building your personal library of like a knowledge base, it is going to help you out as we get deeper into this AI age.
Yeah, and it's only growing too, right? Like, every time I have a new idea, I just pull open my files and I go, okay, let's make a documentation on everything I'm thinking about X subject. Now I have another one. So then I have all these files, and I have a tool that can engage with them. So it just really like saves me so much time. I don't forget stuff. Like it takes away the human error aspect. I think a rookie mistake, not a rookie mistake, but someone getting into LLMs, like they might sit there for, with, the best intentions, they might sit there and type into a prompt for 20 minutes and forget something. Like they'll forget a key integral part of a line that they should have added. And then that LLM, it's going off what it knows. It's going to be able, it's going to fail its job for you. It's not good. It's going to let you down. So like having this kind of documentation and theoretically a tool like mine, like it ensures that the human error is gone, and it's always pulling from the right documents, and you can just trust it.
Yeah, but and even the way you've architected it, it's not just making sure the human error is removed. By keeping human in the loop, you're minimizing the errors that AI can make. Instead of just saying, hey, go nuts, update all these files like one big batch that you don't have any insight to, you actually see the diff side by side so you know what is getting changed.
Yeah, that was super important to me because, I mean, as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know, like, AI can hallucinate, like it can make mistakes. So the human in the loop concept was super important. I wanted to be able to manually stamp and say, approve, I approve this, change that. Because, that's such an integral part of, working with AI.
Yeah, and this is your data, like you said, the source of truth. You got to make sure it's truthful. Just on the project itself, were there any features that took you longer than expected to implement? You ran into roadblocks or extra friction along the way?
Design, getting the design right took me a lot longer because I think this looks really beautiful now, but there was a lot of going back and forth saying, I want this to look prettier. I want this to look more like this. How come this button's here? How come that button's there? That took a lot of back and forth. It was tedious. I wish there was a better way of doing that. If anybody has a better idea, leave a comment below. But yeah, that took me forever. So my wife's a graphic designer by trade, a UI UX manager. And I was telling her, I was like, I understand that AI is changing the way people work, but for now, your design skills are still very much in need.
Yeah. There's AI is phenomenal at being average at everything. So people who are very talented at graphic design will hate what AI outputs, but someone like me who's terrible at design, hey, it's a level up. I'll take it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it gives you a starting point for sure. But yeah, like you asked me like things that took longer than I expected. Like this tool took me 4 days to build, and I think 2 of those days was just making it look pretty.
And actually, one thing I wanted to touch on is you've just given AI access to your files. It'll make a justified reason as to it. One solution, which has been very popular for the last years, is just using a vector database where it'll actually embed all the files so you can do semantic similarity. And it's this big process. Some people swear by it, some people don't. Was there a reason you decided to just have files that the AI could just read and make decisions with?
I think yes. So I'm not a developer. I should clarify this. Like I keep saying that, but like I'm of the impression I want to have as much control as possible. I like this human in the loop aspect. I want to feel like I'm actively participating with the AI, and it's not just working for me, it is working with me. And I am of the impression that with vector, fuzzy matching, etc., if somebody were to theoretically, or if I was working with this tool and I said, what are our financial goals looking like this year? It might pull up the right documents. But, for example, maybe I have a file that I didn't pull up and I know it's in there and like, okay, or it shows me another file that might loosely talk about it. For example, on my personal website, I have a little bit of information on a lot of pages. What if it was like, okay, let's update your personal website to say X, Y, and Z. And I know for a fact that there's a page on there that it wasn't pulling up. I feel like with fuzzy matching, with vector databases, it's got a higher likelihood of not being precise. It's not being perfect. Like, it's using math, right? I think that's the way I understand it. This actually pulls from a source of truth. So for your dev-minded people, I have a file here called manifest. So this is an archive of, actually demo workspace is probably better. I have a file here called manifest So this is an archive of every file I have. And the way it pulls it back is if I talk about X subject, these are the files that have that subject. And so this is actually manually. This is the one part of this that's actually manual. So every time I add a new file, I upload manifest JSON and I say, update this manifest file with these topics. And so if I talk about any topic on here, it first looks through here. That way it's actually for saving tokens, but it also makes it more precise.
Last question for me. What tool, AI tool, do you wish existed to help make your life easier that doesn't currently exist?
I think a design tool, really. Like, we were just discussing how the design of this took forever. Like, that can be frustrating for me. Like, I know that there's a lot of design AI companies out there, but I have had a really difficult time getting design to look right the first try, using, I guess, the 3 tools that I use, ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. I would love to see something that could make this possible faster. There was a lot of back and forth. I keep harping on that, but there was a lot of back and forth. Like a button would go wrong, dark mode would look silly, something like that. And even with my own AI skills, which I know I have, that still took me a tremendous amount of time.
Design's one of those things where you do want to be precise in the edits and tweaks, and AI is non-deterministic and tends to make big changes when you only want a small tweak. So definitely room to improvement there. Justin, really appreciate you coming on, sharing your journey, sharing your tool. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like the audience to know?
No, I just thanks for having me. This was really fun. I like sharing this stuff. I like nerding out about it. I'm sure some of the people in your audience feel this way too, but I get really into this stuff. I really like it, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your podcast. I appreciate your show. It's cool to see people as into this as I am, and yeah, I just appreciate what you're doing.
Appreciate that. Love hearing it. And where can people keep up with you?
My website, justinborge.com.
We'll link it down below. Justin, have yourself a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Justin Borge. I'm so happy that I was able to have Justin on to share his experience, how regardless of the amount of experience you have with coding, if you have the tenacity and the agency to engage with AI to learn something new, you too can build a system that will save you time. And when we save time, you don't have to replace it with more work. You can start shipping more, get more higher velocity and get more output, but you can also take that time back. Like we were talking about with Eric, spend more time with your family, get outside more. AI is going to unlock this ability for us because you can take the knowledge you've learned, put it down into a document, feed it to AI, and then just learn how to build that into a system that'll actually work for you. I really hope everyone here is going to experiment with making their own system. Try something new. Just have a conversation with an AI assistant to see how you would approach a problem, and then just take a swing at it. All these things can be learned, and the amount of time to learn a task and the requirement to actually master it is plummeting with the help of AI. So you don't need to be an expert in order to build something. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I'll see you next week.